Episode of Focus on this week. This is your weekly program that brings you different current and dominating topics so as to influence positive change within Tanzania, in Africa and in the world at large. Leading the program, as always, I am your host, Caroline Maleo, and of course we'll be together from the beginning till the end of our today's program. On this episode, we actually turn our attention to one of the most strategic sectors in Tanzania's future economic development, and that is the energy sector, as well as its growing role in regional cooperation. Our topic of discussion is Eacop and beyond, 100 days of President Dr. Samia Hassan's leadership and the future of regional energy cooperation. As we clearly understand, Tanzania has marked the first 100 days of President Dr. Samia Hassan's current term of leadership. The energy diplomacy sector has taken center stage following the recent official visit of the Ugandan's newly elected President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Amongst other things of their discussion was based on the East African crude oil pipeline project, the Eacop project, the project that the Prime Minister, Dr. Nchemba, went to actually visit and see what's actually going on in the project in terms of the construction and the completion, which is actually one of Africa's largest infrastructure projects that is actually designed to transport crude oil from Hoima, Uganda, to the Tanzanian coast, that is Tanga. The pipeline actually stretches over 1,400 kilometers and is actually valued at more than $5 billion. Eacop project is not just a pipeline; it is a symbol of actually regional integration, economic ambition, and shared prosperity amongst Africa as a region. For Tanzania, this project actually represents opportunities for revenue, for jobs, for skills development, but also for infrastructural growth and for stronger diplomatic ties within East Africa and beyond. But beyond the Eacop project, important questions actually rise. How prepared is Tanzania to fully harness its oil and gas resources, but also how much have the citizens benefited so far and will benefit more? And how do we balance between the economic growth with environmental responsibility in a changing climate world? To help us unpack these critical issues, I am joined with distinguished guests. The first one is the Managing Director of the Tanzanian Petroleum Development Corporation, Mr. Musa Makame. It is an honor to have you in the program today. You're mostly welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We're also joined with Dr. Hildebrand Shayo, who is an economic analyst. You're mostly welcome.
Thank you for having me in the studio.
Gentlemen, welcome to Focus on this week. Let me start with Mr. Makame. We actually saw Prime Minister Dr. Nchemba visiting the Eacop project in Tanga this Monday. For viewers who may not be familiar with the project, what do we mean when we say East Africa Crude Oil Pipeline Project?
As you said earlier in your introductory remarks, Eacop stands for East Africa Crude Oil Pipeline. It's a project which aims to build an infrastructure, a pipeline that runs from where our neighboring brotherly and sisterly country, Uganda, found oil in Hoima. They have two oil blocks there. One is called Tilenga and the other one Kingfisher. In one of them, they cooperate with Total Energies, and in the other, they cooperate with a company called CNOOC, C-N-O-O-C. So the oil will be produced there, processed, and then put into the pipeline, transported all the way to Tanga in order to be shipped to the global markets. So the project essentially provides room for Uganda's oil to be exported outside Uganda.
As you have clearly explained, I one day had an interview with the ambassador of the High Commissioner of Uganda to Tanzania, His Excellency Mwesige, and he told me that the Eacop project is like a token of appreciation of Uganda to Tanzania. But I'm curious to understand, why has more kilometers been put to Tanzania and not to Uganda?
Well, if you look at the map that the pipeline traverses through the two countries, from the original source of the oil in western Uganda to the border with Tanzania, it's just under 300 kilometers. And then you cross into Tanzania to get to Tanga, which was researched, and we believed that to be the best port area to use. And you also have to recognize that we had to move around, for example, not touch Lake Victoria, not touch most of our national parks in the northwest areas. So we ended up with more than 1,100 kilometers on the Tanzanian side between the border and Chomboleani in Tanga.
Okay, so that was the reason. Let me go to Dr. Hildebrand Shayo. Can you tell us why is the project strategically important, not just to Tanzania, but also to Uganda?
Well, the project Eacop is strategically in two ways. For Uganda, it's going to unlock the Uganda's oil reserve, which now is going to have an opportunity to export its products to the international market, oil market. Meaning now for Uganda, they are going to have export revenue, they are going to have foreign exchange inflows, they are going to have government royalty and taxes throughout the companies, individuals, firms that will be involved in this project, and national oil industry development, which now is going to give Uganda a capacity to grow its economy. Similarly to Tanzania, because the oil, as my colleague has just said, the part of the large track is within the country. Tanzania, we are going to have transit tariffs that will be generated. We are going to have a corporate taxes, employment creation, both for Uganda and Tanzania during the construction and during the operations. And then we're going to have the port service revenues, and there are a number of firms that will be involved. And there is a lot of advantages that will be accrued from the local procurement participation for the companies that are both local or in joint venture with the participants who have been involved in this construction of this pipeline from Uganda to Tanga. Because I know by the time we see the first drop, there will be a lot of benefits that the heads of states of these two countries, plus their citizens, they will say, yes, our countries have done something to be proud of.
Dr. Hildebrand, with what you just explained, can you give us, you have explained so much benefits that will go to Tanzania and to Uganda, but so far, can you tell us how much has actually been generated in terms of land compensation, local procurement, the services that are actually linked to Eacop? How much has already been made?
I think my colleagues from TPDC can have exactly figures in terms of numbers. But what I know, during this negotiation between these two countries, when the pipeline was initiated, there was issues of land compensation. That has been taken care of. I understand a lot of people who had their piece of land being part of this project have satisfactorily been compensated. And that's why you don't hear any claim, any quarrel that this pipe has not done justice to us. But also in terms of companies that have been involved, they also have been benefited. And the number of jobs created along where the pipeline has passed, in a way, has shown to pay back to the communities. So in terms of exactly how many people have been paid, how much they have received, I think those can be well taken care of with my colleague who sits in the kitchen, because they're the ones who have the numbers and the data, because these have been continuing improving, because we have not yet reached the completion of seeing the first drop getting into a ship.
Well, in terms of compensation, we had about 290 people whose houses, accommodation were affected. The project has built brand new houses of much higher quality totaling about 340, because some of them had more than one house affected. In terms of cash payments, we did pay upwards of 30 billion shillings, somewhere around $15 million. But for a lot of these project-affected people, we also helped them not only relocate, but also restore their livelihood. So, for example, if someone was farming, we found them alternative farming land. We financed them to, redo the farming, and during the 1 year, they're also getting food baskets, or rather, living support, so that they get to the next harvesting season. So it's only not just paying them and then forgetting about them. No, we paid them and we continued supporting them until they're back on their feet again.
Okay, because there are cases that have happened, not with regard to Eacop, but to some projects where people are actually not well compensated, or people that get compensated, but they go back to the areas that they were told to move. Has that situation not happened?
No, it hasn't, and it's because we followed the IFC standards, international standards, which require you not only to just compensate, but compensate and restore livelihood. That second part, in terms of our laws, it's not mandatory, but for this project we did it, and that helps make sure these people, not only they don't go back to where they were moved from, but also they thrive in their new areas. I think there was a second part to that question of how much has been paid to local suppliers. Eacop has spent upwards of $700 million, which is more than 1.3 trillion shillings over the time of the construction, to pay local contractors and suppliers.
Yesterday, Mr. Makame, actually this Monday, we heard Prime Minister Dr. Mwigulu mentioning that there has been a case of these companies that you can think that this is a local company owned by a local contractor, but actually are owned by foreigners, and they're just frontlining Tanzanians in the front, but actually they're the ones that are owning the companies. How did you make sure that with this project, Eacop, that actually the local contractors are actually local contractors, but not foreigners?
Yeah, that was a very good observation, and we constantly work on that. So to start with, for anyone to be able to supply or be contracted in the oil and gas sector in general, you have to be registered. If it's an upstream project where we explore for oil and gas, you have to be registered with PURA, the Petroleum Upstream Regulatory Authority. If it's in the midstream, where we have pipelines and stations and things like that, you have to be registered with EURA, the Energy and Water Utilities Regulatory Authority. So that's like the first sieve. You can't just go in and be given a contract by Eacop or any other project for that matter. And then EURA, for this matter, Eacop falls under EURA. They have checking mechanisms. Every now and then, they go out and check. The Prime Minister is true. In one of the checks that EURA did, we did indeed find maybe 2 or 3 companies that had done these kind of things, where it's a foreign owner, but using local Tanzanians as owners on paper. And that was, punished. Basically, we ban that company from any future tenders. But the $700 million has gone to over 200 companies. So you will always have 1 or 2 people trying to do these kind of things, but EURA has done a tremendous job to stem that out.
And how do you ensure that that does not happen again?
Like I said, first through the registration process, EURA vets, makes sure this person is indeed who he says he is. Because if you don't vet at the beginning, you're likely to have a situation that Honorable Prime Minister said yesterday, someone uses his driver. So obviously, if you vet the company, you can see that this person cannot have the ability to own this equipment or that equipment or this level of company.
Now let me go to Dr. Hildebrand Shayo. Dr. Shayo, when we speak about Eacop, a person at home might be wondering, Eacop, how does it benefit an individual Tanzanian personally?
Well, there are different ways that individual Tanzanian like me, like you, or like any other can benefit or has benefited out of this project. You remember there is the issue of local content. Now, when we talk of local content, we are talking of different aspects. Maybe it could be financing, could be issues related to local transportation, issues related to accommodation and things like that. Now, during the different phases of this project, from the time it was conceived to the time the construction started, normal Tanzanians who were along that area where the project was going to pass through, in one way or another, had been involved in trying to supply certain goods and services. Now, in economics, we do have what we call multiply effects. Now, somebody who is not on the front seat, who did not supply, let's say, vegetable to a company feeding the workers who are particularly stationed in a particular area given the nature of the activities, this person is acquiring these goods from somebody else. Now, this somebody else is producing them, they are being processed, they are being transported. You have those who are doing inspection. So there's a whole chain of individuals who are indirectly benefiting out of that restaurant that is providing food to the employees who are working on a particular area. This is both for Uganda and for Tanzania. Now, a farmer, for example, with the livestock being slaughtered in Dodoma. I know in Dodoma they have the modern slaughtering facility. There's one I did work for 3 years, or the one in Kibaha or Bagamoyo. Now, the animals slaughtered there, they are prepared in such a way they meet standards that is according to the standards for the international employees who are working in the project. They come with the standard. Now, for somebody who is taking its livelihood, its livestock to be slaughtered in Kibaha or in Dodoma abattoir, automatically he has benefited. Now, for a normal Tanzanian might think, okay, Eacop is there, I'm not benefiting. But since many don't do analysis of seeing how am I part of this process, you might not see it directly, but indirectly, a majority of Tanzanians, majority of Ugandans, small, large, and medium, in one way or another, has benefited. Look, for example, employees who are saving, those who are saving in this construction of the pipe. They're also being paid. Yeah. So the multiply effect is so huge. That's why the amount of money which my colleagues have said the government has paid to the compensation and the amount of knowledge, skills that has been generated, the engineers, those who have been able to access certain sections of the construction, because this is a high-tech pipeline, and it is historical for the sub-Saharan Africa, I think, because it is heated because of the nature of the crude oil. So in a way, a lot of have benefited. Assume those who are providing accommodation for students who are in school, who are in college, who are learning about oil and gas. Because there is a market off-taker somewhere, these guys are benefiting. So,
I even learned about Eacop at school.
Yeah, so a number of people, a number of individuals have benefited. Even somebody who is selling chicken has benefited. Those who are selling eggs have benefited. But when you look at the bigger picture, one may argue there's no benefit that has gone directly to individuals. But I think looking at the value chain, upstream all down to the time the contract was signed, somebody maybe during the inception period to bring together all the employees, somebody has rented the hall where you bring food, people meet there, they are told these are the do's, these are the don'ts, this is how you behave, because this is an international assignment where the world is watching. So this is how you should make sure that you take care of your health and safety issues. Somebody who is having that building or that hall where the activity is taking place has also benefited. So even the people who are producing bottled water has benefited. So the beneficiaries, they are in millions. But as you said, it is very difficult for someone to jump in to say, I don't see the benefits. But when you look at it at the economic, at the bigger picture, you'll see everybody has got a stake. That's why we need to be proud of this project as Tanzanians, as Kenyans, and we need to thank our leaders who have been able to put their mind together to see it is now time for us to be in each project.
As Ugandans.
As Uganda, Tanzania and Uganda. And now let me go to you, Mr. Makame. Dr. Hildebrand explained the benefits that Tanzanians have already benefited from the project, and they should actually open their eyes and see that they have already actually started receiving the benefits. But what's going to happen mid this year when the project is actually completed? What will this mean to Tanzania as a nation? And actually, how will TPDC ensure that Tanzania benefit from the project and not being just, you know, the country where the pipeline passes?
Well, so mid this year we expect the project construction phase to come to an end. But that is the beginning of the operations phase. The operations phase we expect will run for at least 25 years. They will be transporting that oil for at least 25 years. Now, what does this mean? Number one, the number of jobs will be reduced. That is normal for a project of this size. You have 10,000 people now during construction, but you will only have directly employed by the Eacop company maybe less than 300 people.
Mr. Makame, before you go on, this Monday, Dr. Mwigulu mentioned that you should, with the Eacop project, because it's going to be completed, as you explained, this year, there should be permanent employment and not just part-time employment. And you're actually explaining that there will be a reduction of employees.
No, there will be a reduction because out of the 10,000, there is a lot that are employed specifically only for the construction phase. Now, when we get to operations phase, you'll have people in Uganda where the oil is being pumped. We have pumping stations, 6 in total, but 4 in Tanzania. There will be camps located in these pumping stations. As the oil flows through the pipeline, we need to keep the speed the same. So the pumping stations push the oil. And then as the oil gets nearer to Tanga, we have 2 pressure reduction stations. So we'll have people located in this as well. And at the terminal, the export terminal in Tanga, there will be people. There is the control system, which will be in Tanga as well, looking at the entire pipeline, how everything is working. So we will have permanent employment for sure. And we, as Eacop, we ran a program to identify young people that will be employed. They've been taken through training programs, over 120 of them being Tanzanian. So there will be these permanent jobs directly with Eacop. But then Eacop will continue to require other services, logistics, food supplies to these people that are in the camps. We will need security services. So we will have permanent employment indirectly. For example, Suma JKT has security contract. So they will employ people that will be working, on paper they're working for Suma JKT, but contracted to Eacop. So it's Eacop really that has driven that job creation. So they will be continuing to have this. But as you mentioned, as Dr. Shayo mentioned earlier, the oil developers up in Uganda will be paying a tariff So TPDC, being the holder of the 15% ownership in the project, will be receiving dividends. This company will be paying corporate income taxes. They'll be paying other taxes for the employees, for the other services. But then there is other opportunities that we are looking at. One, when they start production in Uganda, they will also be producing LPG, liquefied petroleum gas, which we use for cooking. You may not be aware, up until now, all the LPG we use in Tanzania is being imported from overseas. So now we'll have a source closer to home, as in Uganda. That will make it easier to import. We believe we've started early negotiations with them. We believe that might come in at more reasonable prices. It remains to be seen. But we're also looking at how can we use that whey leaf for other uses, because we've acquired quite a big piece of land, and it can be used, for example, part of it, not necessarily the entire stretch. But as Tanzania, we are now working with the government of Uganda to develop refined products pipeline running from Tanzania to Uganda to send them refined diesel and petroleum. So that might be used as well. Uganda is in the early stages of developing a refinery, so they might take some of their crude oil, refine, which means they will be able to sell within the region. That will give us a source of oil as well within the region. So there's many other advantages that will continue to accrue to Tanzania. And we are there as a shareholders, which means we see it first time.
Maybe well, there's one point which my colleagues has maybe overlooked in terms of what the Prime Minister insisted about the permanent jobs. You know, this pipeline from Uganda to Changole and Tanga is of high tech and say unique in, I would say, in sub-Saharan region. Now, there is issue of IT and cyber security. Now, this is going to provide jobs for the high-tech guys who are IT-based to monitor the flow, as he said, clearly, because this is a heated pipe, the flow of fuel, of crude oil from Uganda to Tanga. So the act of having the 24/7 running of the pipeline, given the amount of barrels of crude oil that have been transported from the source to the storage facilities, which are almost complete in Tanga. I think I saw some pictures in today's newspaper. That the act of having people working 24/7, because this is also a security issue. Because I don't think all the development our countries are doing, some out there are very happy. Because from economic point of view, what Uganda has done in collaborating with Tanzania is going to power our economies. That means we are now going to be able to cover some of the issues that perhaps we are depending on others to help us, given that there is accountability, there is transparency of the use of these resources, maybe through the Wealth Sovereign Fund. We can have funds for both Tanzania and Kenya, depending on how you have said, which can save the future. So in this process, there will be permanent jobs in such a way that they will safeguard this interest, because if anything is left unattended, it can be easy to be jeopardized. So I think Prime Minister Honorable Mwigulu Nchemba is right. And as Makame said, some of these jobs, they might not be seen openly there, but internally, they are there for Ugandan side, but it's also for Tanzanian side. At the end of the day, we'll have a 24/7 flow of fuel that hits to the international oil market.
Yeah. Doctor, with what you just explained, I actually recall Mr. Makame, he mentioned that there are structured training that the Tanzanian youth have received. But I want to ask you, Dr. Mwigulu, I read Dr. Hildebrand, I actually read somewhere where I read that actually the president of Uganda actually took the young people to go to different countries across the world to study about oil, about, those things in best universities before even the project began. And he just mentioned that we have the training that actually have been provided to the young people. I want to know, has the training been provided before the project began or now? And what lessons do we learn from this?
Well, you remember when this issue of pipeline from Uganda to Tanzania started, we have to agree this is a new terrain for both countries. It's for the first time the economic production level has been reached. So for Uganda, yes, Museveni, having seen this, he took deliberate action to ensure, in collaborating with the universities that are within Uganda, in collaboration with the other international universities, selected few were, based on the criteria they used, were taken to go and study about this new field coming in, so that they may be able to be part of the institutional memory for the production. And for Tanzania as well. I remember Professor Muhongo at one time when he was contributing in the parliament, he was talking about the need for Tanzania to start thinking ahead. So there was a time, there was advertisement, those who were interested in studying the oil and gas, and there are some who have been taken to it is true, the data will testify that, have taken to study on different universities, inside and outside, where they specialize on very critical elements of the oil and gas. So given this is a new area and necessary measures has been taken, I think moving forward and moving future as LPG, as you said, you are in the process of having more expansion. We are going to see more local Tanzanians or local Ugandans who have got the skills, knowledge, and ability even to run this pipeline. Because I understand, maybe I'm not a lawyer, but I'm imagining the contract, they might have signed some kind of a technological transfer agreement between the big companies that are part of this business to make sure that at least that knowledge remains back home. Because we have the resources that are still waiting to be discovered. I know my colleagues from TPDC will tell you more about oil fields that are under drilling right now, or maybe feasibility studies are being conducted, or maybe they are on the final stages of having the host government agreement to engage in contract. So all these will need specialized individuals, and you can't get them on the street. You have to train them, and to train them to international standards that they can work in Tanzania or they can look jobs anywhere. So long they are Tanzanian or so long they are Ugandans, they can even bring, diasporas bring money back home. So in a way we can benefit. So I'm sure within the Ministry of Education and Professor Mkenda is also aware of this development. And that's why if you look at the way he pushed ahead the idea of having science subjects, because with this you also need to study science. You don't so I think everything is taken care of. Yeah.
Let me go to Mr. Makame with what Dr. Hildebrand have explained. That there is much that has to be done, and actually he has explained that much has already started to be done. But I'm curious that currently at the moment, if we speak about Tanzania, do we have enough local experts currently to run major oil and gas projects in the country?
Yes, we do, and I need to add one point to what Dr. Shao just mentioned. Uganda found oil, yes, in the last 20 years. We began gas production in 2004, so that's about 22 years. But initial gas discoveries started happening in Tanzania in the mid-70s. The Songo gas field was discovered in 1974. So we started developing skills in the 70s. As we were preparing for those exploration activities in the 70s, we started developing skills as well. Initially, it was not structured, it was not a lot of people, but we did get a lot of support from friendly countries. For example, Norway did train a lot of our seniors. I may pick one example. Today, PURA, the upstream regulator, is headed by Mr. Alfani. He's one of those, you know, he used to be technical and upstream director in TPDC earlier in the days, but he was trained many years ago by the Norwegians. So they did a lot already, and the University of Dar es Salaam started the geology department many years ago. And then with more gas discoveries in the early 2010s, 2010 to 2012, we realized now we needed to go beyond just the exploration side. So a lot of petroleum engineering courses started being developed. Right now we do have engineers being trained in oil and gas at the University of Dar es Salaam, UDOM, the Maritime Institute, DMI, as well as the what used to be called DATEC. So we do have, but in managing large-scale projects, you have multiple areas. As a resource owner, what we need is people with skills to understand what we have and what we need to get out of that. For sure, we have that. When you get into now actually developing the project, you might need some skills that you don't have. And you usually have contractors that come with that. Now what you do is when the contractors come, like you mentioned, or Dr. Shaw mentioned, you have contracts that force them to transfer that knowledge. A very good example is our natural gas pipeline that runs from Mtwara to Dar es Salaam, which was built by the government between 2012 and 2015. It was built by exactly the same Chinese company, contractor that's building Eacop. But when they built it, they only had 2 years to operate and transfer knowledge to Tanzanians. Today, that pipeline is run 100% by Tanzanians. If you go to Mtwara, a place called Madimba, where we have this huge gas processing facility, and the pipeline running 500 plus kilometers to Dar es Salaam, 100% run by Tanzanians. Last year we clocked 10 years of operations without what we call lost time injury. So highest safety standards as well.
Okay. TVC One viewers, if you are tuning on TVC One right now, the program on air is focused on this week, and today we are discussing about a very important sector towards Tanzania's economic future, which is the energy sector. And here at the studio we are with the Managing Director of TPDC, but also with Dr. Hildebrand Shayo, who is an economic analyst. Stay with us in the program. Let me go to Dr. Hildebrand Shayo. Dr. Shayo, can you tell us how does energy cooperation now across countries contribute towards peace, stability, and economic integration in the region? Because I recall the founding fathers of African countries had always wanted unity in the continent. So how does such energy cooperations like Eacop strengthen our integration as the continent?
You know, our region has been, over the past years, been faced with some of the, I will call them minor conflicts, that when you look at them critically, sometimes they're unnecessary. Meaning, perhaps those who are instigating these conflicts, they have their own ambition. But once you have a project like the one we have between Uganda and Tanzania, there is a lot of benefits that can be accrued at the international level or at the regional level. The fact that you have the Ugandan government involved in a joint project with another country, that is Tanzanian government, there's a lot of joint security issues that perhaps they are not for public to be put out there, but on how to secure the protection of this pipeline, of this business. Now, in between, there are negotiations. So you can't fight between two countries. At the same time, you're doing business. So that cannot happen. So in terms of conflict, as I said, because East African region is known to have conflicts, which are obvious, without going to the detail who is fighting who, or which group is fighting which group within the region. But when you have this business, let's say Uganda and Tanzania, the issue of Tanzania fighting Uganda or Uganda fighting Tanzania, it is history. It will never happen. And maybe, I don't, but it is history. What I'm trying to say, the businesses, when they involve one or more countries, it builds strong bond. It builds understanding of the leaders, which unites the people. And once the people understand each other and each party is benefiting economically, socially, even politically, you find that there won't be a quarrel, there won't be conflict. Don't take me wrong, there could be some few individuals between, but at the bigger picture, having projects in between two countries, that is a solution for this small conflict that may arise because you don't like me, I don't like you, or you are interfering with my business. Yeah.
Dr. Shayo has clearly explained how such projects actually promotes unity and integration. But to you, Mr. Makame, one might be wondering how much gas reserve and oil reserve does Tanzania have so far?
Oil reserves, we do not know yet. We do have gas reserves, 57 TCF. We are still in exploration stages in different areas. We do see some indications of new discoveries that may be oil, may be gas. For example, we have a block called Eacop, which is running across the East African Rift Valley in Singida, Manyara, Samia regions. There is hope that because of the geology being the same, more or less, with the geology in Uganda and in Kenya on the Rift Valley, it might have oil, but we are still in the early stages of exploration as TPDC. We're already doing that. We have a block in Tanga where we are targeting to drill an exploration well later this year or early next year. It's also targeting an oil play, as they say.
And what are the projects, gas projects that are available in the country that people might not know about them, oil and gas projects?
So you may be aware that for now gas is being produced from two different areas, Songo Island and also Mnazi Bay in Mtwara.
Yeah.
In Mnazi Bay, we are already producing, but we are doing some more work as we speak. There is a rig that is going to be drilling. It started drilling the first well, and we'll drill 2 more wells. We expect with that to increase the level of production in that field. There is a field close to it in Mtwara as well. It's called the Ntoria gas field within the Ruvuma PSA, Production Sharing Agreement. It had gas discoveries made some 12 years ago. It is now in a development stage, meaning those 2 wells that were drilled in 2012, we will be completing them ready for production. We'll be drilling 1 new well in that area. Again, this will start later this year, and we are already constructing a pipeline that will connect this gas field to the Madimba processing facility. That is already under construction. Besides that, we have some areas where we are still in the exploration stage. Like I said, Eacop, Tanga. We have Songo West, which is to the west of the current producing field in Songo, Mnazi Bay North, and Lindi Mtwara. Lindi Mtwara is next to the Ntoria field. But beyond that, the Ministry of Energy, or the government rather, will be announcing very soon a licensing round where more than 20 blocks will be made open for exploration, where new investors will come in and carry out the work.
You mentioned about investors will be, like license will be announced to welcome investors. Dr. Hildebrand, how is the investment environment now in areas of gas and oil? Is it conducive for the investors in Tanzania? How is the environment?
Well, you will agree with me, Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, our president, has been insisting of making sure that investment environment is in order and is good to attract more foreign direct investment. So we are now having combined the TISEZA and the TIC. Now they are one. Make sure that all the investors, maybe once you put them out for tendering, everything will be easily managed under one roof. But apart from that, there will be a lot of other things that is providing Tanzania to be a destination for investment. The way we are trying to make sure we could continue to have our peace. The more the regulatory framework has been improved, the way issues of land has been worked out, most of all the hurdles that previously were seen as obstacles to allow investors, even the way an investor can repatriate part of his capital after he has invested and after he has paid all the necessary taxes. All these are now in place, which provide a very good environment for investors to see Tanzania as their next destination for investment.
Let me go back to Mr. Makame. He actually clearly explained that the environment is conducive, but there are people that some Tanzanians are saying they have kind of negative perception in terms of investment. You know, when they see that there are investors coming to the country, you know, they're saying they're taking our gas, you know. Assure the Tanzanians that these investors are actually coming to invest and actually tell us the share of profits. How much is Tanzania benefits in terms of percentage, and assure the Tanzanians that this is actually for their own country's benefit.
So in oil and gas, one of the things that a lot of people do not know is before we even sign into a contract, we usually have what we call a model production sharing agreement. This has been developed over time. It is being reviewed every now and then. We are now reviewing the latest one. This document is provides the governing framework of how an investor comes in, how much they will invest, how do they recoup their investment, and how do we share what remains, and how much gas or oil is also pumped into the local economy. Now, these agreements usually make it possible for the investor to put in their money and recover, but they don't recover just automatically. Those costs that they have put in first, before they put in, their budgets have to be approved. So they get scrutinized by...
Who approves it?
They get scrutinized initially by TPDC as partners with them, and then between us as TPDC and the investor, we go to PURA, who is the regulator. PURA does the approval now, and then they do the spending. And then PURA comes back and audits that spending. So if there's something that they spent wrongly, if they used the wrong procurement methods, if they chose people, you know, not in the right way, those costs get thrown out. And it has happened. And the investors had to give up and accept that, okay, we did something wrong there, we will not recover that. But in terms of the numbers of how much we get, in oil and gas, typically, after cost recovery, the government gets usually more than 50%, between 50 and 80% after cost recovery. So if the project, one gas well will usually cost 20 to 30 million onshore. So they will recover this much because it's their money that they put in. And then all the gas that's being sold beyond this 30 million is profits. Then on that profit, we usually take between 50 to 80 million. No. So 80%.
80%.
Yeah. So obviously, it's a very good way of bringing in capital because these projects are capital intensive. For offshore oil and gas fields, the ones that are happening in the ocean, one well will usually cost somewhere around $100 million. So it's not cheap. You need to share these costs with someone. And that's why we bring in these investors. We did have a company here coming from Brazil, somewhere around 2012. They drilled a couple of wells. They spent in excess of $300 million, and the only thing they got was fresh water.
Oh.
So if I were to use, if TPDC was to invest all this money ourselves, because we want to keep everything to ourselves,
it wouldn't be
then
possible.
we would have lost $300 million. And if I was the MD at the time, I would have lost my job, for sure.
But on this one, there's also one aspect very interesting on how our local banks can participate. Because of the massive capital required, you find that you need to have a very strong banks, like the development banks that can chip in and in a way maintain the local content part of the financing, because as you said, when you are distributing the profit, even the banks that have lended to the local companies or to the companies that have been able to get access to various stages of implementation of these projects, they also get a return on their investment. So it is a question of local banks being able to participate. Now, the local banks can benefit either by doing what we call in banking lead arranger or fund manager, to manage funds for other companies or investors who are coming through the banking system. But also there's another issue my colleague will be able to explain clearly. It's issue of insurance. Imagine the Brazil companies that only spend such amount of money and they only got water. That means from the insurance point of view, maybe there was a clause. If you don't get what we are looking for, somebody has to pay for the loss incurred. Now imagine, as he said, a bank, without naming the bank because we are not their marketing officers here, spent such amount of money. And this is a government bank, which is the taxpayers' money, and you lose that amount of money. What will the managing director do? So it is a wise decision to make the environment for attracting investment to be good, conducive, and people, investors from outside can see Tanzania as a destination. They can bring their capital. Yep. Okay.
Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about the LNG project in Lindi. Mr. Makame, Tanzania has over 57 trillion cubic feet of proven gas reserves. Where does the Tanzania, as you explained earlier, so where does the Tanzania 42 billion USD LNG project stands now? Do we see a green light that it's going to be completed soon, or?
I will start with that final part of your question. Yes, we do see a big green light that will be completed soon. The project goes through 3 phases. First, you need the agreements that will underpin the investment. And then you do the engineering studies to understand how you're going to get the gas. And then it's the actual construction and operation. So we are in the last, very, very last stage of negotiations for the agreement. We believe we should have the agreement signed before June this year. And then they will be going through approvals on both sides, on the government and the investor side. And that paves the way for the second part, which is now the engineering studies. Will take 2 to 3 years. And then the construction, another 4 to 5 years. So, yes, it's almost there.
It's almost there.
we have already agreed, just to shed more light, we've already agreed the commercial fiscal terms. We are just now finalizing the legal aspects, and it's quite few issues that have remained, which I believe, like I said, before the end of June, we should have everything wrapped up.
We look forward to the completion of the project. I'm being told that we're almost out of time, but Dr. Hildebrand Chayo, just shortly, can you tell us how much could energy investment contribute to the growth domestic product over 35 years to come?
Well, looking at what is the vision of Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, our president, and going back to when he was showing on the new leaders he appointed recently, she said that she will want to see the energy sector contributing significantly to the GDP of the country. And she was looking at attaining at least 7% increase in GDP. And that's why he even decided to assign 2 individuals. You will deal with oil and gas, you will deal with power and electricity, renewable energy, solar, and things like that. So what Dr. Samia's thinking about the future of this energy sector is for it to allow the economy to thrive well, to ensure that it creates more opportunities for local businesses, it creates more opportunities for industrialization, for industries, factories that are going to add value to some of the raw materials that are being produced locally in order to be able to export value-added products. That will give us foreign currency, will create jobs for our young people, but also will give, in a way, a good price for the manufacturer, for the producers, be it farmers, be it small-scale miners. And you have been told recently the small-scale miners are now part of the chain of producing gold that is being stored and things like that. So the totality of the environment that has been put in place is going to enable our economy to move, to grow strongly. And maybe if we maintain the status quo, we are going to be in the middle income at the upper level and not lower level where we are. Because the investment that has been taking place is huge. And now Tanzania is seeing what our leaders have done. And that's why recently when the World Bank gave that report and saying Tanzania is not among the 30 countries that are poorest in the world. And people were wondering why Tanzania is not there. It's because of this investment the country has done. People are now better off, although one might not see it in his or her pocket, but Tanzanians have the right to walk forward, ahead, because the economy is moving to the right direction.
Indeed, the economy is moving to the right direction. Now to close, let me go to you, Mr. Makame. You know, studies show that fossil fuels contribute significantly to greenhouse gas emissions. And Africa is amongst the most vulnerable to actually this climate change. As Tanzania expands gas and oil, as you have already explained, the explorations that are ongoing, how can we balance now gas exploration, economic growth without destroying the environment?
So, first of all, we need to recognize the fact that a lot of that emissions that has happened, that has created this problem, didn't happen or start in Africa. It was mostly from industrialized nations.
So are we starting now to?
We are not doing it on purpose that we just want to go out there and pollute the environment. But what we are actually doing is moving people away from, for example, charcoal and firewood, right? So if we use our gas resources, electricity that's produced from gas and other sources, like hydro, people cooking using more gas rather than charcoal and firewood, then we're actually saving the planet more. But again, on the transport side, we are still at a very early stage, but you might have seen in the last year and a half, we have developed quite a big network of compressed natural gas stations in Dar es Salaam. As TPDC, we've built one of the largest. Puma just, inaugurated theirs, larger than ours, last week. And we are promoting all the companies, private sector, to invest more into that. Now that allows us, for example, instead of a vehicle, a bajaji, to use diesel or petrol, then it uses natural gas, which is much cleaner than diesel or petrol. So we reduce emissions that way. So it's a balancing act, but it's not something we are not paying attention to. We believe natural gas will do a lot in the transition globally, but within Tanzania, to take away people from biomass, charcoal and firewood into cleaner burning fuels.
Thank you so much.
But I think on that, there is also the issues of regulations. The technology, as it advances, we are getting the mitigative measures that are going along with the technology. So we have learned our lessons, so whatever the government does, is also there's a mitigative measure to make sure that we don't harm the environment.
Thank you so much. TVC1 viewers, the program on air was focused on this weekend. Today we were with Mr. Musa Makame, who is the Managing Director of TPDC, but also with Dr. Hildebrand Shayo, who is an economic analyst. And here at the studio, we discussed about Eacop and beyond 100 days of President Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan's term of leadership and the future of regional energy cooperation. And as you heard a lot from the program, indeed, natural gas will actually do well with the transition towards clean energy. Until next time, I was your host, Caroline Maleo. Bye-bye.
Dunia imelazimishwa kutazama angani kushuhudia maroketi na kombora, milipuko mikubwa, utando mweusi